My name is Bill Fisher. This demo covers the 3D multiplane camera in Adobe Animate. For this demo, we're going to be using the workspace called Essentials. As you can see here, I have a layout for an environment that is broken into a number of different layers. We're going to take these layers and configure them in a multiplane, three-dimensional space using Adobe's 3D camera. The first order of business is going to be to set up advanced layers. We can do that under Modify Document, selecting Use Advanced Layers. We're also going to need to add a camera. If you don't see the camera in your toolbox, you can click these three dots, drag it in there, and now we have a camera. Animate's 3D multiplane camera is in a panel called Layer Depth. So we can choose that from the window drop-down, and it looks like this. I'm going to drag it into this vertical bar right here so that I can get access to it whenever I need. Let's open up our layer depth panel and find the layer called floor stage. You can see when I highlight that, it will also highlight it in my layer system down here. This is going to be my baseline layer. This is where the characters that I will be putting in and animating are going to be positioned. Let's break down the construction of this environment. We can see that we have closest to our camera a layer called Hills Foreground. We have a little hill over here to the left. I put that on its own layer because I wanted to move it independently. We've got a little sun, some sun rays. We have the stage floor, and this is where our characters will be animating, and we have the foreground floor. Okay, we're going to start by adjusting the depth of this left hill right here first. In order to do that, I want to be able to get a good look at it, so I'm going to turn off this foreground layer. And then I'm going to drag some guides here, 3 guides, so that I know in the layout where I want that sized and positioned. Because when I change the layer depth, it's going to make that hill larger. So let's set that at around 133. Then I will unlock that layer and grab my transform tool, and holding the shift key down, I'm going to get it positioned back where it was. Now you can see that as I move the camera in and out, that hill moves more quickly than the layers behind it, just like a real multiplane camera would do. To move the camera, we select this blue bar right here. That's the camera plane. When we're in layout mode, this should be set at 0. 0 camera depth will be our default for the layout. So I have created layer depths for all of my planes. I can move the camera in and out and see the effect. Usually want to keep that back as 0 because that's my initial layout. I'm going to pull this panel out so we can leave it up while I'm working. You can see I made a little bit of animation here using camera position in tweens. So I positioned the camera here at frame 30, and at frame 60, you can see I positioned the camera at a unit of 364. Here's how I can accomplish that. I'm going to insert a keyframe here. I'm going to open up my layer depths, and I'm going to move that camera. Remember, I set it at about 364 previously, so I'll just type that number in. So that's two ways you can do it. Selecting the camera, whichever layer depth you choose, it highlights that line. So camera highlights the blue, so I can choose that and move it. As you see, it's pretty filled with that one hill. So the second thing I'm going to do is click the camera tool, and I'm going to move up. So with this tool here, you can only move up and down and back and forth. If you want to move in and out, you need to use the layer depth panel. In order to simulate a camera truck in, I simply put a classic tween right there. I also place tweens here on the planes or layers themselves so that I could do some color adjusting and have that color adjusting change gradually as the camera truck-in simulation was occurring. Let's get our properties panel out here so we can see what's happening with that. Let's look at the hill's foreground. You can see that I don't have any color effects or anything on that here at the beginning of the truck. But as we go down here, I wanted it to get darker. And so if I choose this layer, you can see I made the brightness -30 to make it appear like they were really closer to the camera, out of the light, and to create a frame there on the bottom. And I adjusted pretty much every layer's color as I trucked in. The other thing that I did with this keyframe was position some things where I really wanted them to go, not where the camera placed them. For instance, this hill's foreground, if I turn this keyframe off or delete it temporarily, you'll see that it went way over there. But I wanted it to still be in the frame. So what I did was move it from way over there up to where I wanted it. Now, I also have 3 characters in this animation, and they show up right there. Those characters, Dizzy, Biff, and Max, are all set on 0 for layer depth, which, if you recall, is the layer depth that our floor or stage is set on. Each one of these characters has a character folder with quite a few layers in it because they're puppets. To set the layer depth for these, we can simply use the folder. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting the layer depth for the folder, and then that affects every layer inside of the folder. Let's take a look at a short animation that I made to test the layer depths and the layout. That seemed to work pretty well. One thing you may have noticed is this long lateral trucking move. We don't use the layer depth to accomplish those. What we do instead is use the camera tool, which is right here. And we just set the position of the camera at the beginning and the end of the sequence. Here's a run through of how that works. Let me remove this keyframe for a moment. and this tween. I'll place a new keyframe here at 226 and then grab the camera tool, and at that point in time I'm going to shift this over to about here. I'll insert a classic tween, and let's see what that looks like. The final step that I'm going to do is put a little bit of easing into this camera move. Our character accelerates and decelerates. I put that easing on them earlier. So I want the camera to mimic that and accelerate in and decelerate out. I'm going to click on this purple area. That denotes that we have a tween there. Open up properties right here where it says effect, no ease. I'm going to choose ease in and out. Looks like it's choosing cubic for me. That's probably because that's what I had just put on the character. I think I will leave it on cubic because then they will match. Do you have to remember to hit the return key so that it remembers that that's what we want? Let's see what that looks like. We can see that the camera accelerates and then decelerates, just like the character. And that wraps up the demo for today.